This week, we watched the 2011 urban cult hit Attack the Block and find out along the way that British people aren't really all that pleasant and what's up with the alien teeth. This is Force Fed Sci-Fi. Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is sure to be another thrilling, exciting edition of the Force Fed Sci-Fi podcast. I am your host, Chris Rupp, and I am joined with my co-host,
Sean Culp.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Like we said at the top of the show, this week we watched Attack the Block. Ooh. I, for one, was excited when we picked this. I watched it a couple of years ago, and I didn't know what I was getting into when I first watched it.
Okay.
Because all I saw was John Boyega was in it, and like, hey, he's in the new Star Wars movies. Why don't we give this a try?
Oh, so you watched this? Okay. So
I watched this a couple years ago.
Somewhat recently.
So going into today's episode, I knew what I was getting into.
Okay. I had no idea. When you mentioned it, I'm like, that's a film? And I saw who it was, John Boyega. I'm like, all right, cool.
This movie, it came out in 2011. It's about a London street gang that has a chance encounter with an alien and suddenly find themselves in a fight for their home and survival. So the movie's runtime is just under 90 minutes, so pretty short. You can definitely crank it out in an afternoon. But who wrote and directed this movie?
The director is Joe Cornish, and it was written by Joe Cornish as well.
Mm-hmm. Joe Cornish does have pretty good screenwriting credits. He did The Adventures of Tintin, the Steven Spielberg animated film from a few years ago. He also wrote the first Ant-Man with Edgar Wright.
Oh, snap. So he's probably making some good money.
Well, he was until he did the King Arthur movie earlier this year, The Kid Who Would Be King, and that was that didn't do so well.
Well, no one asked for that film.
No, nobody's asked for a bunch of these whole medieval remakes that we've seen in the last couple of years. I think that movie, The Kid Who Would Be King lost something in the range of $40 million.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's like John Carter.
Mm-hmm. But when this movie came out, it really was gave Joe Cornish a bit of a rise in his name. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised it took him this long to direct another movie because I thought this was very well done for your first outing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's solid for such a low budget.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to see a great film, that's why I've been saying about this. If you want to see a great film with a low budget, check it out.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's also starring John Boyega, who we now know as Finn from the new round of Star Wars films.
Mm-hmm.
Jodie Whittaker, who is now starring as the Doctor Who character.
Yeah.
The first female Doctor Who, which I know pissed a lot of people off for whatever reason. Again, it's just in this case, I think it's just a bunch of British incels who want to hold on to their idea of who the character
British is. Incels, yeah, right? They own the intellectual property.
Yeah, I got news for you guys. You don't own anything. It's who the creators and producers want to go with.
True that, brother.
Also starring Nick Frost as a, I guess dimwitted is appropriate term.
Dimwitted pot dealer?
Dim-witted pot grower?
Pot grower, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure of what his role was within the criminal enterprise.
Other than rocking those jumpsuits.
Yeah.
Those nice Adidas jumpsuits.
Well, the movie takes place in one night, so of course he's not going to change his clothes. And Nick Frost's character does seem like the kind of guy who has multiple jumpsuits.
Oh, yeah. That's not a one-shot stop, man.
There's also, the cast is rounded out with a few other bit players. I noticed from a lot in looking up the credits that for a lot of these guys, this is their only movie. Or they did television after this, a few of them. One of them went on to become a pop singer. Another does mostly London stage works. So these, with the exception of the three we mentioned, they haven't gone on to bigger and better things.
Nope.
Which isn't true of our American movie child stars.
Yes.
Like the Goonies, those actors all went on to bigger and better things. I mean, Josh Brolin is wiping out half the universe now. Sean Astin, is Samwise, will always be Samwise.
Oh, yeah. Jodie Foster, all those guys.
Well, Ke Quan from the Goonies was in an Indiana Jones movie.
Freaking Natalie Portman.
Mm-hmm. So at least our child actors, most of them go on to do things, and most of them don't develop drug habits. So let's get into the filming of the movie.
All right.
So there were only 2 suits that were built for the aliens, and you were saying something about there was just people in those suits the entire time?
Yeah, it was just like gorilla suits with guys.
I imagine that got really hot.
Oh my goodness, I know. When I saw them, like what the real monsters were, I just started laughing. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You actually got real.
Now, were the teeth computer graphic, or were those part of the costume?
They were part of the costume, but they added the lights and then the other rows in it later in editing.
Okay. Well,
so there were some
did look pretty good. I mean,
they were
without
solid.
I mean,
yeah.
I think the suits had to have something besides, because they were just straight black.
They were. Well, the blackness where they didn't reflect any light, that was also CGI.
Okay.
So like how, they're like, this is the blackest thing I've ever seen.
To be honest, I couldn't really tell with that.
Yeah.
I thought that was, they picked out the blackest black they could find.
Same. It was solid.
Yeah, I didn't know that was CGI'd.
It was done the CGI in this film is done very well.
Yes.
For as low of a budget as it is.
It was used when only necessary.
Yeah.
And with lower budgets like this, you can't cram a movie full of CGI.
This is like the perfect film to follow up Star Wars.
Exactly. We get a movie that had close to 2,000 visual effects, and then we watch the movie the following week that has a fraction of that number.
Yeah, and it's done 10 times better.
Exactly. I mean, this is
kids.
This is a lesson George Lucas has yet to learn: is you don't need overwhelming visual effects to make a great movie.
Gosh, hey, the Jaws were animatronic though.
Well, I mean,
that's
still worked.
Yeah. Oh, they were solid.
I guess 15 pages had to be removed due to budget constraints. Actually,
really.
So that translates to about 15 minutes of movie time.
Oh.
Well, you got to when you're script writing, you got to think of a minute per page. And I would love to see a rework of the climax with those pages, if at all possible with that.
It makes me wonder what they took out.
Yeah,
if it was like the ending or if it was just extra stuff. Because this film does kind of end like sharply right after the climax.
It really does.
It really it doesn't leave like a weird taste in your mouth, but it just makes you. I don't know. It's just kind of it ends.
I don't think you end on the emotional high point of the movie, but you don't get anything beyond that. There's no characters that are getting any type of comeuppance or answering for anything, because there's still a lot of people who died in this movie. There's the 2 police officers, the 2 kids, Dennis and Jerome, who get killed. Hi-Hats and his gang, they all get killed.
Yeah,
and nobody's. And, of course, the poor dog, Pogo.
Yes, that is our red shirt.
Yeah, that
Pogo.
dog did not have to die.
No, literally, that was its whole purpose of this film.
I felt so bad for that dog. I have to say, I almost felt worse for the dog than I did at any person dying in this movie. Yeah. And I feel like that for most of the movies I watch. Anytime there's a dog sacrificed on screen, it's true.
But usually, you're also a dog owner.
I am. But usually when the dog is killed, it's done in an unceremonious way.
No, they didn't even show the dog being killed.
Usually if a dog is killed in a movie like this, it's to foreshadow impending doom and gloom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that poor dog, like, you could hear its, like, squeals.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh.
And that is the cutest name I've heard for a dog. Like, I'm not into cutesy names like that, but I thought, like, okay, that's appropriate for a little dog like that.
Do you know this film actually? It was shot for 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
That was it. Just 6 weeks.
Well, I guess the mugging scene was the first scene they shot on the first day.
Yes.
So that definitely set the tone for the movie.
The mugging scene. So this film was actually written. The director was mugged when he was younger. So I guess it inspired him for the film.
Yeah, and then he added all the, obviously aliens didn't come after he was mugged.
There is no aliens that have come to London, unless, I don't know, you're a conspiracy theorist and you can tell me.
Speaking of aliens coming, though.
Is that our science for the...
I do want to talk about the kids making first contact with this alien. Assuming that Moses is the oldest of the group at 15, and I'm guessing the rest of the kids are between the ages of 12 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
Upon immediately encountering the alien and it attacking Moses, their first thought is to go after the alien and bludgeon it to death.
Yeah.
So this is the question I want to ask is, who do you want in the event that aliens do come to Earth? Who do you want to make first contact with them? I mean, obviously you need somebody who's non-threatening, who can speak for the Earth in a way that is like, hey, we come in peace. We're not here to hurt you. My first thought, Oprah.
I was thinking Tom Hanks.
She's non-threatening, universally loved. What if Oprah and Tom Hanks made first contact?
My God, that would be the
aliens would embrace us with open arms and everything would be golden.
They would.
Because if you don't love Tom Hanks, well, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And
if you don't love Oprah.
And everybody loves Oprah, but I think that's more for the fact that they just want a free car.
Yeah, that's what I mean. She would probably give the
aliens would come down and she would just point at all of them like, you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. On the flip side of that, this movie is definitely a case for teenagers not making first contact.
No.
They should not be allowed. And in this week's segment of people not doing their jobs, where are the kids' guardians in all of this?
They aren't. There's only one scene where it shows them with their parents.
Yeah.
So they've realized that aliens are attacking, because there's a scene where like the aliens rain down to the earth through like fireballs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh no, we're being invaded. So they all go home to get their weapons to kill these aliens, and all their parents are like, come home in 10 minutes.
Well, it's really
all these different things.
And it's the briefest of scenes, too.
It's so brief.
I mean, we get a brief scene when Biggs is trapped in the trash bin where he's calling his mom, and his mom doesn't believe what he's saying.
No, she doesn't. The whole time he's calling her.
If that was my mom and I was calling her locked in a trash bin, she would be locked and loaded, hunting me down, be like, and yelling through the streets, where are you?
Aw.
I mean, aliens be screwed that they're running around in the streets. She wouldn't care. She would just like, no, I told you to come home 10 minutes ago, and that was an hour ago, and you're still not home. You better get home.
And I liked how they were all counting their minutes and texts throughout the film. I'm like, oh.
The good old, like, this movie is only like 8 years old.
Yeah.
So back, people still counting down the minutes on their phone nowadays. People don't care.
I only got one message left.
Yeah.
You can't send all this information in one message.
I got 1 minute left, Mom. I'm going to make it count.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Let's talk about actually the accents, the dialogues.
Yeah, I felt like
very heavy.
Definitely heavy on the Cockney. You definitely know that you are in Britain when this movie opens.
Totally.
But I felt like I needed a glossary of terms.
Yeah.
Watching this movie, especially in the beginning, because I had watched this, but it was a few years ago, and I totally forgot all the slang they were throwing around.
Totally, and it's like heavy slang. I guess the director wanted to include it because these kids are, what could you say, like poverty? More impoverished.
I don't
kids?
think
lower
not in,
end?
Definitely on the lower end of the income spectrum, but I wouldn't call them impoverished because they have places to live.
They do.
All of them have cell phones. They have clothes to wear. It looked like relatively new clothes.
Yes.
So I wouldn't call them impoverished. Definitely call them unsupervised.
Yes, they are unsupervised, and they're mugging people.
Yeah,
and robbing people.
Which I have to say that this gang
fireworks.
Yeah. Who are you robbing with fireworks? I do have to say, though, that this gang comprised of Pest, Moses, Dennis, Jerome, and Biggs is actually pretty cool. They're pretty diverse, but never, with the exception of the first scene where they're mugging, I never considered them a gang afterwards.
Yeah, they definitely scrubbed that later.
This definitely felt more like a group of friends that were
kids.
Yeah, that didn't know what to do with their station in life. Maybe in the future, one or two of them will get out of the block and move on to a better neighborhood and better things. But never once did I feel like that this was a violent, we're out to get you gang, with the exception of the opening scene.
Yeah. And I'm glad that with the diversity of the gang.
Well, it's important to do that if you are going to do a movie that's kid-centric, that you have to feel and empathize with the kids.
The thing is, it's also, like, it's a kid-centric film, but it's R-rated, right? Because they swear.
They swear
use
a
the
lot.
F-word all the time.
Hi-hats, swears all the time. And
there's blatant murder, blood, guts.
Yeah, aliens are ripping people apart. This is a hard R.
That's why I like this film. It's so ironic with kids and everything. It's totally something that you wouldn't see it made in America.
Oh, yeah. There's a slang, there's the kids. I mean, even the kids are being killed, too, which we don't see this a lot in American films.
And I think our producer, Jeremy, was saying that they were debating whether to use subtitles.
Yeah.
Or not, because it was so slang heavy. They were worried that American audiences weren't going to
It gives flavor to the movie.
It does. It took me out some moments where I was just like, but you pick it up.
But it feels right being uttered by unsupervised preteens.
Totally, because I was thinking about that while watching this. I'm like, dude, this is something, A, that I would do as a kid if I was that age, and B, like, we were swearing and saying crazy slang when I was 14, 15.
But also all the pop culture references, too. Like, there's Harry Potter references, Gears of War, Lord of the Rings, Pokemon, Call of Duty, Naruto. I feel like Joe Cornish really did his homework when
He did.
trying to research how to write dialogue for kids.
Oh, yeah. This film is tight.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed watching it.
I would love to see a long cut of this movie. If those 15 pages are out there, Reddit users get on that and then
see what it's
and see what it looks like. Do an animatic, put it on YouTube, or petition Joe Cornish to do like a postscript for this movie. But I feel like that this movie would be prime for a reboot.
A reboot?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Maybe not so much a sequel because...
a sequel...
Well, John Boyega's gone on to do bigger and better things. Jodie Whittaker's doing Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I don't know where Joe Cornish's career is going to go after The Kid Who Would Be King flopped. But if you did a reboot with like one or two of the kids from Stranger Things, or if you leaned hard into the violent direction, I feel like this could be a decent reboot.
Well, it could. I'm not a big fan of reboots.
Well, we haven't talked about that much on this show.
I know.
We often find films that are entrenched that can be encased in one movie.
Yeah.
Or they're already part of a longer story. But this is the first movie we've watched that you could go either way, where there could be a sequel or there could be a reboot for it.
I don't think it would be as good because
it
would just be them older.
Exactly. The sequel would have to be something along the lines of Moses has grown up.
Family, kids.
Maybe
he's
not
out
family
of the
and kids,
block.
but he's out of the block. He's going to school full time. Because John Boyega still looks like a baby.
He is.
So you could definitely pull off that 21, 22 look.
Well, I wouldn't mind actually seeing like it done 20 years from now. Like doing a later sequel and then just like having them get the gang back together. I could see that.
Like Return to Attack the Block?
Yeah, Return to Attack the Block.
I wonder how that poster would look.
Right?
Like Moses in a wheelchair or something, and Pest still has a limp from where the alien bit him.
Right?
You don't understand, bruv. It still hurts when it rains. Every night on that night, on the anniversary, it always hurts a little.
Samantha Adams is now an actual doctor.
Yeah, and is like Moses calls her up like, listen, they're back. You need to come help us. And she just hangs up the phone like, nope.
But they have to suck her back in somehow.
Yeah.
That would be, I could see that.
I wanted to look up, because at the beginning of the movie, we see all the fireworks going off, and I wanted to look up if there was any significance to it.
I think it was a celebration.
Turns out the movie takes place on November 5th.
Okay.
Which in the UK is known as Guy Fawkes Day or the Gunpowder Plot. And if you're unfamiliar with that, it was definitely kind of fantasized in V for Vendetta.
Okay.
So a revolutionary by the name of Guy Fawkes wanted to blow up Parliament. And him and his conspirators were planning to begin the Catholic uprising by destroying Parliament, but he was betrayed and executed, and hence November the 5th has come to be known as Guy Fawkes Day.
Guy Fawkes Day.
But now it's come to be celebrated in the UK with fireworks being set off. So having it set on Guy Fawkes Day is definitely an analogy for rebellion, and applicable to kids. They're unsupervised. They're leading this war against the aliens that nobody else knows anything about.
Yeah, which no one knows anything about them this whole film.
Yeah.
It's like no one believes them.
In this country, at least, if there were even a hint of alien activities, there would be the Men in Black or the CIA or whoever is in charge of overseeing all that would be all over it. Those people would be sequestered. And
you wouldn't know anything.
Tommy Lee Jones would just come out of nowhere being all cranky. Just like, we need to stop all these aliens. And Will Smith would just be like, chill, man. All right?
Let's go get some pie. This film, I think if we were going to take it anywhere, I just wouldn't. Because the CGI is so tight. What makes it, for me, incredible is how low of a budget it is and how well it was put together. Like, if it had too much of a budget, I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But while we were watching it, I could understand why people wouldn't enjoy it. Because when we were talking before this, our producer, Jeremy, he had to, get into it a little bit because we're so used to these big budget films with all the CGI.
And I mentioned this too off air, that this isn't going to hold up with the bigger budget alien movies like Predator or Aliens or even Mars Attacks. No. But this is definitely worthy of a mention when you're talking about the alien genre if you want a good change of pace from the genre altogether.
Totally.
I mean, this has gone on to cult status.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, come on, think about it. It's like the aliens are a bunch of guys in gorilla suits.
But it's done in a way where it doesn't feel like that, though.
No. That's what made it so great. While watching it, like, I noticed it while watching it, like the plastic prop puppet alien when they land. I'm like, this is amazing. Already it's great because of the cheesy prop. But it works. It works in and how they used it. And it wasn't too schlocky.
Well, all the action in the movie is tight as well.
Yes.
Like when they're escaping the block and they're on bicycles and Dennis has his moped and...
Shout-outs to mopeds.
Yeah, and Biggs has to actually do his jump to get away from the aliens. I mean, even that scene is very tight.
It was.
Everybody gets their own cool moment in the movie, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. Mm-hmm. But I did feel like a lot of it was overshadowed by Moses.
Yeah.
He definitely gets the lion's share of the hero moments.
Yeah, he's the main protagonist throughout this film.
He's marked as the protagonist right in the beginning when the alien scratches him. So right away he has that distinguishing mark that a lot of heroes get in the movies. Mm-hmm. You know, like scars, or they get some unique tool that will help them on their journey. And Moses has the scratch on his face.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he, exercises his authority as the hero of the movie by murdering the first alien he comes across.
Just brutally murdering.
Yeah, he's like Cartman in South Park, just beating that alien to death, like, you will respect my authority.
No question. Just bam.
I mean, he's definitely, he's not so much the leader, he's the oldest, and by default is the leader.
Yeah, that's how I took that. Because he's definitely not the most grounded. Because that's Jerome. Jerome's the most educated in the entire film.
Jerome's the most level-headed, but Jerome is killed, unfortunately.
He is killed. That was a cool scene, though.
Yeah, the two characters in the gang, quote-unquote, who fit into a box, Dennis the Enforcer and Jerome the level-headed lieutenant, are killed off right away. Pest, I don't know if I would be able to classify him with the typical, like, gang stereotype.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not the stereotypical white kid because it doesn't feel like it's a commentary on anything like that.
No.
He does get injured, but I feel like he's more of the gang idiot.
Yeah. He's got a big mouth.
He tries hitting on the much older woman.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you're bleeding all over her couch. He's no one to stop.
Yeah, dude. He always has something to say.
And then Biggs is the not too sure of himself member who...
He's the youngest.
Yeah, he's the guy who could waffle in and out of the gang and everybody would be okay with it. Because like you said, he is the youngest, but I don't see him being an essential part of the gang.
No. He's stuck in a trash
He spends
can.
Half the movie in the trash bin.
Literally, I actually forgot about him halfway.
Right, and then you see him
like
trying to talk to people like, hey, come help me. Then the two kids, Probs and Mayhem, have to bail him out by using the super soaker, which you initially think is filled with water.
It's gasoline.
And then you realize, oh, crap, that's gasoline.
I know. Those kids are great.
They are awesome, but they're all unsupervised.
They are.
And you know what? They're 6.
Yeah.
I don't know a single parent who would let a 6-year-old out of the house unsupervised.
I know, and they're trying to join the gang. That's like the funniest part of this film.
No, it's Probs and Mayhem, like, Reginald, Gerald, you need to go home.
I know. Those kids are great. I actually thought they were going to get killed. So they kill Pogo. And so everyone runs away except the two kiddos, and they see the alien running towards them. I'm like, aw, you going to kill these kids now? But no, they didn't. And they paid off in the end.
In spite of all the action and horror in the movie, this movie does feel very grounded with the characters.
Oh, totally. That was my favorite part about this film.
You have Jodie Whittaker, who has just started her career as a nurse. She was mugged by Moses at the beginning of the movie.
How did you feel about the female interaction? She's like literally the only. It's like her and the 4 girls. Like the love interest for Moses.
I feel like the female representation could have been a bit stronger in this movie.
Because they're really not in the film too much.
Well, when we're first introduced to them, it's almost like they all have an attraction to one another. Like this is like the makeout club or something.
Yeah, that's how like a bunch of kids getting together.
But then nothing's acted upon, and then we don't see the girls again until about another hour into the movie.
Yeah, it's like coming towards the climax.
And the girls do get their hero moment too. Yeah. They kill one in the bedroom
with a figure skate.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
But as soon as all of that's over,
it's done.
They run away.
Yeah.
And Sam is the only one who's left.
Yeah.
She did save Moses with the kitchen knife, but she is the only one who's sticking around. I don't know if it's a character choice of her not knowing where else to go.
She seemed like that the whole film.
Because even
just
Pest
seemed
is
out of
bugging
place.
her, like, well, where's your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Like, she could have gone in the nice little old lady's place.
I know. I feel like she was an adult that just kept getting put in the wrong situation.
Yeah.
These kids just inadvertently kept following her and ending up where she was.
Yeah, these kids have just roped her into the worst night of her life.
Totally. Like how they ended up in Europe. Yeah, exactly. She couldn't escape them. That kind of sucked. I did like how they tied in the aliens to Moses. Because the whole reason, while the film's going, I'm like, why are they keep sitting there attacking Moses?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't these things be spreading out? And so what ends up happening is, I guess, the first alien that lands is like this female alien, and then all the males come and they want to procreate.
Mm-hmm.
And so because Moses kills her, all of her juice, body, pheromones,
there you go,
gets all over him.
It is.
And he attracts all the males to
That's
him.
a big word of the week, pheromones.
Pheromones. And so that's...
We're working on helping Sean to expand his vocabulary.
My vocab. But so that was the major plot point. I really enjoyed that, how they tied that all in. Though I did not enjoy the high boy.
Hi-hats?
No. The coked out, drugged out kid the whole time.
Brewis.
He wasn't my favorite.
No, he wasn't anybody's favorite, I don't think.
He was actually the director. His whole character was written by the director because he said that's what he was in his 20s. This pothead that just watched TV animal shows.
I don't feel like Brewis added too much to the movie.
No.
It was Joe Cornish doing a cameo without having to actually film one.
Yes. Couldn't have said it any better. His whole point basically was to explain the pheromone.
Yeah.
That was it. And then they had that scene where they're in the hallway, that was one of my favorite scenes in the film with like the fog, where they shoot off the fireworks to kill all the... That was done very well. Though I wouldn't have minded if it was dark and there was like a flashing element with like kind of like in Snowpiercer, where they're fighting with the candles and everything, you know. Have you seen that film? So good. We'll talk about it when we watch it.
Well, I just haven't got around to it.
It's all right.
I lead a busy life.
I understand, Chris. But how did you feel about our villain, Hi-Hats?
Yeah, in a movie full of bloodthirsty aliens, how does Hi-Hats become the real villain?
And he's like this, not a mob boss, but the gang drug dealer, I guess, in the block. And he's much older. He's got actual weapons. Yeah,
despite UK's ban on weapons, he's able to get guns pretty easily, it looks like.
Yeah, which kind of threw me.
But he, in the parking garage, he offers up his lieutenant to just die.
Yeah.
And then he ropes in the two gun dealers who brought him the spare gun. Mm-hmm. They get killed in the elevator. And then the whole time, Hi-Hats just thinks that the movie or that the story is about him.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He won't believe what he's seeing.
No,
because he just saw these things, these creatures murder his friend and his two other friends, and he's still thinking that, oh, this is all Moses' fault.
It's a dog.
Like you brought the feds down on me.
I know. I was like
like it's not about you, dude,
bro.
And that's the problem with villains like this is like they're in a lot of ways they're worse than the actual threat. And Hi-Hats is a pure example of that. And he gets his shot in Fruta near the end of the movie. He gets eaten by the aliens. Which
that was a good scene too.
Oh yeah,
great. Like I don't know if that was props or if it was makeup or if that was CGI. But they basically you see them slowly whittle away. It's a cut of the aliens over him, and then another cut of half of his face ripped off.
You know, of that scene where they're trying to bust into the apartment and the scene where Biggs is stuck in the bin. It reminded me a lot of the raptors in the kitchen from Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of these good little touches to, I think, Joe Cornish's favorite sci-fi films. Because at the beginning of the movie, you see the night sky.
Yeah.
And to me, that reminded me a lot of Predator or The Thing.
I wonder if it was callback.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah. I mean, because imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Very true.
And I think this was Joe Cornish's way of, paying tribute to, Steven Spielberg and John Carpenter and Predator by John McTiernan to say like, hey, your movies were awesome and this is my love letter to you. But in a lot of ways, I mean, this is this is taken from Joe Cornish's experience of like the mugging, obviously, and then building from that his love of sci-fi. And for a science fiction fan, I feel like this is right up anybody's alley. I mean, it's very grounded with its characters. I mean, it has the aliens, it has the suspense in it. But like I said, you feel for these characters.
You do.
And I think we feel for these characters more so than we've had in previous episodes. I think our big, characters that we felt for, Dom from Inception, Marty from Back to the Future, and James Cole from 12 Monkeys. And then we have these kids. And all these kids, they have their quirks about them, but in the end, you do feel for them. Because at the end, right when we're leading up to the climax, we see that Moses doesn't come from the best of situations.
No,
his parents are out of the picture. He doesn't have any siblings. His uncle comes and goes.
Yeah.
Mostly goes.
Mostly. It's just him.
And a lot of I think Pest's guardian is his grandmother, who, if you've ever had, a grandparent as, your main guardian, there is that disconnect that you would feel with them. And we don't know about the rest of these kids. I'm assuming that a lot of them come from either single parent homes. I'm assuming, especially Biggs.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't mention his dad, and his mother is the only parent who's present. Same thing with Jerome. And I think Dennis might be the only one who has a stable family for the most part. But Dennis is ultimately killed. So I think it may have been a clear creative choice by Joe Cornish to kill off the characters who seem like they have stable home lives.
Yeah, it's very ironic.
Like Jerome was killed, and then Dennis and his dog were killed.
Yeah, and Jerome was the most educated out of all of them.
Yeah, so I think this was really saying to the audience that if you find yourself in a situation like this, no matter how outlandish it may seem, no one is safe.
That was one of my favorite aspects of this film, that anyone was killed. And everyone who was killed, there was a reason and weight to it. It was nice.
I do like movies like this that don't kill characters indiscriminately. Like you said, there is a choice behind it. But I do like movies like this where the danger does feel real, where the tension is real, where any of these characters could be killed off any second.
Every move that they made had to be a good one, and they're all figuring it out as they went along.
Well, I think we might be approaching the review territory a little bit. So before we get into that, why don't we talk a little bit about the legacy of the movie? Well, like we said, this is a British film, but we did see it get limited distribution in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think at its peak, it only got around 70 theaters.
Which is kind of shocking.
I did find this out, that it came out around the same time as the first Thor movie and Fast 5.
Okay, makes sense.
Well, it was only in, I think, 66 is the total. It made over $1 million.
Oh, that's not bad.
So it actually, for its theater numbers, it actually outperformed those movies in terms of that sample size. To get $1 million when you're having to compete with those two big budget action films is a feat in and of itself.
And you have a limited amount of theaters.
Exactly.
And what'd you say? It was like 60?
It was 66.
60. So that's like literally 1.3 per state. That's insane. And it made him, hey, that's not bad.
It didn't recoup its budget.
No, it's like $4 million on a budget of $8 million.
Yeah, it's not much. But this movie has gained a cult following since then, which is why we see a lot of people crying for a sequel. I shouldn't say crying. People are asking for a sequel.
Yeah.
And with Joe Cornish having recently done a flop, I don't know what he's going to have to do to turn his career around. But maybe doing an Attack the Block sequel might be the thing that kind of boosts his credibility a little bit.
Right. I would just worry about the Attack the Block sequel, that it would be too much. They'd give it a giant budget. It would be over CGI'd. Because what makes this film so great is how much they do with so little.
Well, it would depend on who does the script, who's directing it, and what studio is willing to put money into it. Because like you said, what did make it work was the fact that the CGI and visual effects weren't overdone.
Yeah.
And it's very rare to see a movie like this where it's not in your face and it's not overwhelming to be successful.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we see a lot of movies now that do practical visual effects are doing well. I think Hollywood will eventually return to that trend of practical visual effects done right. I think Christopher Nolan is leading that charge. Steven Spielberg used to lead that charge, but got away from that as soon as computers were invented to create his dinosaurs. But we can get back there, Hollywood. I mean, you just got to get the right director and the right script.
You just got to get the right people to pay for it. How did you feel about the climax? before we jump into our reviews.
Didn't feel like there was much of a climax.
Okay. Because the climax of this film, for the listeners, is basically like they trap all the aliens in
Moses wants to
kitchen.
Destroy the aliens.
And it's kind of a religious element, right? Self-sacrifice. Ideally.
Self-sacrifice, and also too, I mean, the name Moses.
Yeah.
He comes out after luring the aliens into the apartment that he's going to blow up. You know, he comes out to a cheering crowd of Moses, Moses,
and then gets arrested.
Then he gets arrested. Exactly.
Which is kind of interesting.
We don't get an epilogue or anything else that happens. We don't know if Moses winds up going to jail. We don't know if there was an inquest about how the police officers and all these other people were killed.
The fallout of the families.
Exactly. Like Dennis and his dog were killed, and somebody's got to answer for that. But this is all, and this is also how you do religious symbolism, in my opinion. It's not overdone,
no,
at all. As far as I can tell, this is the only semblance of religious symbolism is naming of the character Moses and having him save his people. Mm-hmm. Deliver them from the aliens attacking the block.
They did it very well.
Mm-hmm. But I would have liked to have seen a bit more of a climax. I thought the slow motion was a bit overdone and could have been shortened up.
Was that your lens flare?
Yeah, the slow motion is definitely the lens flare of this movie. It doesn't have to be there at all. And also, too, when he's lighting that firework to shoot it into the kitchen, it does not take 9 times to light a Bic lighter like that. It does not.
That was my lens flare. I just couldn't, it's after the first 2 clicks, okay.
Even a bad lighter will light on the second or third click.
But once you get to like 5 or 6, it's like, all right, we get it.
At this point, I bet he was thinking, man, I should have just brought matches.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So I think we've discussed the movie. Mm-hmm. What do you say we rate this bad boy?
I'm down.
Well, we have a 4-tiered rating system here on the Force Fed Sci-Fi podcast. We have a wouldn't watch category. We have would watch, would own, and would host viewing parties. Sean, what is your verdict on Attack the Block?
I would do a would watch.
Really?
I wouldn't. I don't know if I'd own it just because I'm not an owner movie type of guy. I'm a one-shot stop generally. But I would definitely tell people to watch this. And if you want to see a good film made, like I've been saying, with a low budget, gotta check it out.
See, for me, this is where we differ. I would call this a would own for me.
A would own.
For all the reasons you mentioned, but when I tell people to watch it, I would say, here, I have my copy you can borrow. But this is a cult hit for a lot of reasons. It's won a ton of audience awards.
Mm-hmm.
Tons. Nothing major. But it is clearly a hot choice with audiences when they watch it, and I have to agree with those audiences.
Yeah, it's so shocking how many awards this thing has been nominated and won for, and it did nothing major.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it was going to win a BAFTA when it came out.
No, definitely not. But at least an MTV or something like that. Maybe a Saturn.
Well, MTV's caught in doing reality television. They're not going to watch a British film for any reason.
That is true.
All right. Well, with that all out of the way, what do you say we pick our movie for next time?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we're going to enlist the help of our friendly random number generator AI, Major Samantha.
Woo.
And we're going to have her pick between 1 and 118 from our recently modified movie list. Had to take a few out of there and switch it up a little bit, but we're going to put it in here. And number 114, which, I don't know what you feel about this one, Sean, but it is 1997's The Postman, directed and starring Kevin Costner.
The Postman.
The Postman.
I've never seen this. I've heard
we
about
are now getting into the Kevin Costner sci-fi realm.
There are so many Kevin Costners on this list.
I think it's just this one in Waterworld, but
these are the only 2 we got on here?
Those are the only 2 so far we got. I mean, there's probably a bunch of direct-to-video ones that he's done that will be analyzed and maybe added to the list for future use because, well, every actor gets into the period of the career where they just have to do direct-to-video sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
We're looking at you, Nicolas Cage.
And John Cusack.
I don't even know if John Cusack is even doing movies anymore. Well, I think that about wraps it up on this edition of the Force Fed Sci-Fi podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. It helps drive us up the charts as well as help people like you find the show. We are across the spectrum of social media with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Force Fed Sci-Fi. You can check out and download episodes at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find podcasts, and please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Finally, you can check out our website, forcefedsci-fi.com, for show notes and links to all of our social media. So for myself and Sean Culp, we'll see you next time. Force Fed Sci-Fi is written and hosted by Sean Culp and Chris Rupp. Website design and associate producer is Jeremy Keski. Artwork designed by Mike Berger. Theme work composed and performed by Custom Anthem.